Welcome to the FutureFoodCast. We are a group of food technologists, industry experts, and food enthusiasts talking all about the future of food. We have our sponsor, Farm to Plate, a brainchild of Paramount Software Solutions. Farm to Plate is a software company committed to creating tomorrow's food business ecosystem today. And with that, today, I am so excited to dive into one section of our food business ecosystem with Elaine Kellman. She's the Vice President of the Flavor Division for Citromax. Ellie, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I love to dive into flavors because it's one of those categories. It's all around me. It's in all the food I eat, but it's not something I always think about. And I'm so curious how you even got started, how you even found out that flavors was a thing that you could work in. How did you get started in this?
It was a complete accident. We all know that flavors are very much a part of our world. We just don't ever really think about it. I am a scientist by degree, by everything. I mean, I just love the sciences, and my degree happens to be in chemistry and biology. And I was going down that path of very traditional chemistry, biology, lab work. I was working in electron microscopy, and it was boring. I just felt that there was something else that I wanted. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know this industry existed at the time. I fell upon this by accident. I was pursuing a PhD in genetics, and I didn't like working with fruit flies all day. It was, you get itchy and just wasn't working. I was applying for other master's and PhD programs when I needed a job. I fell upon a job as a lab technician for international flavors and fragrances, and that was very exciting. I never knew it existed. It opened up a whole new world for me. A wonderful eye-opening experience to see that there's actually an industry that does this. I happen to have had a very sub-threshold sense of smell. They tested it, and I could smell things that most people can't. A lot of people have it, may or may not be aware of it. I'm sure people say, oh, I could smell things, and I have a really sensitive sense of smell. And there are a lot of people that do. But when you have it, and you have a degree in chemistry, and you have an artistic ability, and you have an ability to try things. I was trained to be a flavor chemist, and in the interim did go back to school for a master's in chemistry and food science, and I got an MBA as well. And that's how I ended up in this industry. I trained to be a flavor chemist, but I think the thing about being a flavor chemist is you're always training, you're always smelling, you're always trying new things, and you learn that every time you smell things, it goes into your brain and becomes a formula.
That's amazing to me. And for those of our listeners who are out there that might be more based in the sciences, there are a lot of jobs in the food industry and applications for the sciences, and the flavors is one of them. And I'm so glad, especially with your sensitive sense of smell. I do not think I have that, just based on things don't bother me very much. I don't really notice all the time, and more people do. So they've got the right person in the right seat on the bus, so to speak. So I'm glad that you're there. Tell us a little bit about what you do heading up the flavor division.
Well, first of all, I never left my passion, which is making flavors. So while I do run the entire company, I still make flavors. My office actually is strategically located pretty much in the lab. The lab is kind of like a circle, and my office is right outside it, in it. I just open my door and I'm in my lab. Want to be very much right front and center in the lab. So I still do make flavors. I still create. I will never give that up. But I do run the day-to-day workings of the lab, which means we have food technologists in this division as well, because flavors don't just stand on their own. They're in a bottle and they smell great. You can pull up a bottle and smell it, but they need to find a home. Basically, if it's for a beverage, our food technologists here will take the flavors and put it into a beverage. So they'll create the prototype formulations. So we get to see it in the finished product. We don't create finished products. Our customers do. We sell our flavors. And it's just very exciting. So I oversee the entire operation plus
Yeah.
oversee.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Plus, I oversee all the salespeople who go out and get the projects for the work to be done in here so that we get business.
Well, I was going to ask that. So you talked about your customers are really companies that need flavors.
Correct.
And you're the expert in that.
Correct.
And so they're coming to you for that. Do you keep any of your own flavors, or is there something you're best known for?
Well, first of all, this is a very, I guess, secretive industry. We don't talk about our products. I can't tell you what our flavors are in, but they are iconic beverages and other food products. It's a very, it's quiet. We just don't talk about it. Kind of like a known thing in the industry. But we also own the formulas. We don't give the formulas, they buy the flavors. We have a 40,000 square foot production facility that makes the finished flavor. So they could order a few thousand kilos of it, or, they don't see the formula. And that's one thing that there's a code of ethics, if you will, like we protect the formulas. They belong to us, but they are made for our customers. We make sure we're very careful with our technology department that everything is protected and that it doesn't get into the wrong hands.
Yeah, I really appreciate the confidentiality, and I'm sure your clients are coming to you for that. They are contracting with you. You're protecting the essence of their brand, really. I mean, those flavors are really important to a lot of companies. And so the fact that you are so protective, and I don't want you to give away any industry secrets. I wasn't asking.
I know. I just want to make it clear.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And again, I'm sure your clients really appreciate that. So your day to day is really, you're in that creative space where you're getting source ingredients and products, and you're coming up with what your clients are looking for. And I guess sometimes they give you a profile, and sometimes they're wanting to know what the latest trends are. I don't know. How does that work?
It's both. Sometimes they come to us with a very specific project. We want this kind of flavor. They could say we want a strawberry flavor, but we want it to be a very jammy and ripe strawberry flavor. And we want it to go into this very specific beverage with this amount of sugar or this amount of no sugar or, stevia or something. And we want it to taste, we want it delivering different kinds of functional ingredients. Sometimes they just tell us their wish list, and our food technologists will create that prototype. And sometimes they send us a base and they say, put a flavor in it and make it great and make it cover the off notes, perhaps, of a functional ingredient. So that's one approach. And sometimes they say, use your marketing department, use information and do a proactive presentation. Show us trends, show us where you think it's going. So they use us also for that. And we'll do a lot of proactive demos throughout the year. And oftentimes they're actually used, and they take it and they do get to see the prototype formulation, and they will often launch a product using that. And then they buy the flavor from us. So.
Right, because you're the ones that are creating that, and you've got the secret sauce of how all that works. Now, you talked about, as your customers and your potential clients come to you, you're having to interface with really the other departments at your company or the other vertical.
Sure. Well, the company is vertically integrated in citrus, particularly lemon, because we do about 1.2 million lemon trees in Tucumán, Argentina, where it's processed for juice and oil. That is the parent company. It's a lot of trees.
That's exactly my reaction. So that Citromax owns the 1.2 million lemon trees in Argentina. I imagine that's a really good percentage, or maybe they're one of the leading owners of.
We are actually the second largest in the world.
Okay. I was thinking that just sounds like a lot to me, although I'm not a lemon tree aficionado. But
it's a lot.
So
it's a lot.
Couple things they do with that, though. You've got the oils and also the juices, a couple different applications.
Correct.
And I imagine the oils are what you would use the most in some of your flavor.
Right. The oils are used in flavors, the juice in finished beverage. We do use the oil in a lemon flavor, but obviously oils are not soluble. It's not water soluble in the beverage. So there's two ways we can solubilize it. One is by making an emulsion, but then you have an opaque beverage that has some, it's cloudy, or it could be a washed extract, which then it would be clear. So those are two ways of delivering the flavor if it's a citrus.
Okay. And How did the whole lemon tree thing even start? Now, Citromax, like, how did the company even get started with lemon trees?
So the owner currently is Vivian Gluck. Her father was a flavor chemist in
okay.
Europe, came here and did that, and then ended up working for a company that was in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. And at the time, I believe it was the 50s and maybe early 60s, realizing that Argentina was a really fertile soil for lemons. And that is when the lemon industry began, lemon agricultural industry began in Argentina. And he was involved at the beginning. And today, Argentina is the #1 lemon growing region in the world.
Wow. So honored to be profiling Citromax, as a family-owned company, really, and at the forefront of one of the major industries today, really, that whole flavor profile, and the second largest owner of lemon trees. I mean, thank you for being with us, for Ellie. I'm just feeling honored to be able to share this story with our listeners as well. And I think it's really neat that, this was able to be, they just forged this industry, and he came obviously to the US, and, now you're a big provider here, as well as worldwide, I'm sure. But so how do you figure out, you talked about your clients come to you, sometimes they have what they want, but sometimes they want to know, what are you seeing out there and what are the consumer trends? What kind of research, how do you figure that out? How do you know what the consumers are wanting? We're pretty finicky.
That's a great question. So obviously there's a lot of marketing data out there. Personally, the data sometimes, believe it or not, is not current. What's more current is social media, because all those conversations are very current and very what's happening right now. We actually recently, a couple of years ago, decided to use an incredible platform. It's actually called TasteWise, which follows social media conversations. So basically all of the data from that platform that we're getting is today. It's what people are talking about today. And most times that is really where the trends go. When you have people talking about what they're cooking, what drinks they're making, what cocktails they're making, that's what's happening now, and those become trends. Yes. So we're capturing information that's very relevant and very now, it's absolutely in the moment. And we use that combined with, I want to say in loose quotes, scientific data, which is, I don't know if it's really scientific, but it's data from the more traditional methods of capturing marketing data, the Nielsen data, the IRI, but it's really what's current and what's fun and what are people talking about. And so we use that, we put our heads together, we talk to people, we see what people are looking for, what they're drinking, and where you are in life. Obviously, during the pandemic, that all changed. People were looking for very different things. The conversations were very different. The products that would launch were more immunity based, and and that stayed that way. So trends follow life, trends follow where we all are in life, and then flavors ensue right after that. And what do people want? What are comfort foods? What flavors are comfort flavors? Do you go back to nostalgic flavors and make them more current? Those were a lot of trends we worked on.
Yeah, and decisions you have to make, and the value of what people are talking about currently, today, right now, and social media being able to deliver that to departments like yours and all of the people that are trying to figure out what's next and where consumers looking and what do they want. I hadn't even thought about the ability to just call through all of that and deliver that, just like the older, call on the phone marketing analysis and asking people questions or doing surveys. It's just a new way to get into people's heads and into their living rooms and figure out what they're doing right now. It's just ingenious. Immunity, I can imagine, with the pandemic, and now our awareness is for immune products. I think all of us are paying a little bit more attention to taking care of ourselves and doing those good, positive things. And you talked about comfort foods. I just think that's interesting because comfort foods, to me, I'm in the southeast of the United States. We're typically known for, high fat, high carb, lots of sugar. And it seems like consumers are saying they want different from that. But I think sometimes people talk one game and then they eat the other game, if that makes sense.
100%. Or they talk one game and then they eat like closet eaters. They eat the sugar, and
Yes.
I think that's okay. Finding a happy, own it and find a happy medium. Sometimes you want to be healthy, and maybe 80% of the time you are, and that's okay. And then you go and have a really incredible cocktail. So, if you're going to have that cocktail, you want it to deliver a really big punch. You want it to have extraordinary flavor. You want the alcohol to be high quality. So you're seeing a lot of that. There's a lot of, nothing is black and white, and not in the flavor business and not in the food industry. People are there. They want a lot of things. You can't just be boring and only eat, no sugar, only this and only that and only that. And I think we're starting to see that. I think the pandemic actually helped heighten people's awareness. Yes, immunity is big, but comfort food is big. People were stuck home. So you want something to make you feel better for the miserable life you're having right now. And I think we had some fun with that. I think, yes, people have zero tolerance for sugar and fat sometimes, but sometimes you want something that's delivering, something that's indulgent, but not with the amount of calories that it used to have. Or there's a time and a place for indulgence. And I think to me, that's where where the food industry is heading, or where we're already at. There's a little of this and a little of that. So,
yeah. And we get to choose. And I think, to your point, moderation is the key, right? You're going to do what's best for your body and your health and immunity and all those trends that you were mentioning. But at the same time, every once in a while, you want to treat. You don't want to feel like you're deprived, and you can enjoy some of that food that you really, really like. One thing that was so interesting to me when we talked before was about that I didn't know, and maybe some of our listeners don't know either, is how we actually consume things and how the interaction between smell and taste with our food. Would you mind explaining that?
I'd love to. So think about, I'm going to tell you, I'm sure people who have kids or have seen kids at some point, when somebody gives them medicine, what do? The first thing they do instinctively is they hold their nose. Where do kids learn that? They learn that it's an instinct, because if you can't smell, you can't taste. So if you think about it, they kind of know that instinctively. And the truth is, they're absolutely right, because the only things you taste on your tongue are salt, sweet, sour, and bitter. And now of late, it's umami, which is a savory. But everything you taste is really what you smell. You cannot, if you hold your nose and close your eyes, you probably wouldn't know what you were eating. If you take an onion and an apple, you may think it's the same thing. Other than your eyes might tear, if your ears are, your eyes are closed, your nose is closed, because everything you taste is really what you smell. If you have a cold, what does food taste like to you? Not much. You'll taste the heat, you'll taste the cold, you'll taste the acid, you'll taste the bitter, you'll taste the sweet and the salt, but you won't taste the discerning differences of how it actually tastes. And that's because that's all by smell. You only smell it. You smell green, you smell sweet, you smell cherry, you smell floral, you smell jammy notes, you smell, you smell everything. You don't taste it. And everybody who's listening to this should experiment. Hold your nose and describe what you're drinking or eating. It's impossible. And if you think about anosmiacs, or people who lost their sense of smell during COVID, ask them what kind of food they ate. Probably very hot, very cold, very sweet, very salty, very bitter, maybe with a lot of heat, because that's what you can taste. Nobody thought about smell really until COVID happened. And then suddenly everybody has an interest in it. And we always knew about that.
The flavor scientists always knew, but those of us regular run-of-the-mill consumers really didn't have a clue. Sure. But I am going to have to experiment, Ellie, based on this and try it out. And some of my friends and family, just for a trial over the holidays, I'm going to have to.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that would be really fun to try out. All right, so review, it's salt,
sweet, sour, and bitter,
and then like spicy. You were
umami. Umami is a savory kind of note. That's a relatively newcomer to the tasting piece, but those are the basic 4 things that you could identify and taste. And
Cool.
Yeah, think about that. And think about another experiment, which I do a lot. I did that when my kids were in school and needed, science experiments. We do it here. We make a beverage that's brown, a carbonated beverage that's brown, a carbonated beverage that's red, and a carbonated beverage that's clear. And you give it to people to taste. The first thing is what you see. So your eyes are going to look at it and already have a decision in your brain what it's going to taste like. People are going to think the brown is a cola, the red is cherry or watermelon or strawberry, and the clear is probably lemon lime, because that's just the way. And then you taste it, and it's going to be very interesting to see what people think it tastes like. The experiment was you put a cola flavor in all three, and they will never say that all three are cola. They'll say the dark one, the caramel color one, is cola. They'll say the red one is cherry or watermelon or strawberry, and they'll usually say the clear one is lemon lime.
So interesting. I noticed with children's, just medicine that has like a cherry flavor that they've started to take the dyes out of it. I don't know how many years ago I noticed that, but it was clear, but it still tasted like cherry. And I had a bit of an argument with my mother, actually. No, it really does. Look, put some on your finger, because it was clear.
Yeah.
She didn't want to believe that it actually tasted like cherry.
Well, yeah, and then you close your eyes when you drink all of them, and then you probably would know the right flavor, because you're not looking at it. You're actually tasting. You're focusing on the smell and the taste. But, think about your five senses. First one is what you see. So you look at something and have an assumption of what it's going to taste like based on its color.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Wow. I bet you can't even walk through, like, I think about somebody like you with a more sensitive sense of smell, walking through, you go to the department store at the mall, for example, and they're always wanting to spray stuff. What do you do?
I go crazy. I please leave me alone. Every so often I do let them stop me, because if it's a new fragrance, but I tend to break it down. I go, oh, this has this and this has that. And they're like looking at me like, how do you know this? But yeah, I smell everything. Wherever I go, the first thing I do is smell. When I travel and there are new smells that assault me, not only in a good way, sometimes I want to know what it is. I love smelling things and trying to figure out what it is and what is it about that country. What's that smell seems to be predominant in that country. So it's really fun for me. I never stop working, I guess, in that sense, because wherever I go, I smell. I need to smell everything. I don't just taste things. When I go to restaurants, I smell it first.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. And you also talked about the longer a smell is out there, like it might morph a little bit or change a little bit. I know you referred to like your
Yes.
Yes. Share how that works with.
So
if you're listening on a podcast and can't see Ellie right now, she'll explain as she goes. She's got a stick that's like a wooden stick.
Well, it's actually not wooden. It's a kind of paper. So it's called a blotter. Flavor chemists and perfumers have some things in common. The one thing in common is we smell everything. You see perfumers walking around smelling like sticks, these white sticks all the time. Basically, what these are is a paper that when you dip it into something, you smell it, and you smell first the top notes. So when you dip something in and you smell it, the top lighter notes come through, and then you let it sit on this blotter and it'll change. So in an hour, that's why I let them sit on my desk. And sometimes you'll come into my office and see 10 of them, and they're timed, so I know that I set this up and then I check it in an hour and oh, now I'm smelling this. And then a couple of hours later, oh, no, now I smell this. And, today and sometimes it sits overnight, or I take it home with me. And as I'm driving home, I smell it to see what else comes up. And the bottom notes are the heavier notes. And that stays, the vanilla notes, the dark brown caramelly notes, and those stay on the blotter the longest. So when you're creating a flavor or duplicating a flavor, you can't just do it. You can't just do it from analyzing on a gas chromatogram or mass spectrometer. You need to smell it. You need to be in the dishes with, you need to really get down and dirty and smell it. And that's what we have in common with perfumers. And we speak each other's language. We'll smell it and say, oh, I get the green notes. Green notes you typically get first. The light fruity notes come off the top. Those are generally esters. Esters flash off. They smell fruity and light and wonderful, and then they dissipate. And then the next layer comes through, and that's how you create a flavor and a fragrance. If you love a certain fragrance, you smell it even on you, it changes. It smells different when you first spray it, and a few hours later, at the end of the day, when you come home, you see what's left, and those are the bottom note. They're heavier. And that's the same thing with a flavor. You don't realize it when you taste it, as opposed to a fragrance that lingers throughout the day. You drink a bottle of something, you're drinking it and you're tasting it. You're tasting the top, middle, and bottom notes all together. But when you're creating a flavor and you want the complexity, you need to do it on the blotter like this.
Amazing.
And then it delivers the perfect flavor that's complex, but not necessarily too complex that the consumer will sit there and drink it and have an analytic discussion about it. That's not the intent. You just want to build an extraordinary flavor that has complexity, that gives it dimension, and that makes you want to go back and drink more.
All consumers are not like you, Ellie, and going to go through and analyze everything.
No, I hope not.
Try to figure it out. But I have one other question about that. Then if you're trying to find a flavor for a beverage versus some kind of baked good, that's going to be a different approach, right?
Absolutely.
Because a different approach is going to be different.
And a different delivery. Beverages, you drink, you taste. First of all, if it's a baked goods, it gets baked and the flavor flashes off. So you're going to need something with more heavy bottom notes.
Okay.
Because the lighter notes will flash off. Oh. You need it's a different delivery system. The same flavor in a beverage will taste totally different in a cupcake or in a candy. Candy also gets heated to a very high temperature and then gets cooled down. So you're losing a lot of the top notes. So you can compensate and increase the top notes, but you really want to focus on a flavor that has a lot of the middle and bottom notes that will linger and that you'll taste when you eat the candy or the baked goods. And, you bake things at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, you're baking things off. Right. So your house is going to smell wonderful, but what you taste is different than what your house smells like.
Well, I'm so glad that there are professionals like you who have the science background and the aptitude for figuring all of that out for me. So I get to enjoy the end result and I don't have to figure out how it all got there. Thank you for being one of those people. And we have covered so many different things about flavors and obviously lemon trees and Citromax. Thank you for bringing all that to the forefront. But before we leave, is there anything else you'd like our audience to know? Anything you're looking forward to? Any projects, any consumer things you see, whatever you'd like?
Well, there's a lot of new things coming out, but what I can tell all of you consumers is be mindful and pay attention to what you're drinking and eating. We like smart consumers, and I don't mean anybody's, not smart. I mean smart in a sense like educated consumers. Know what you're drinking, know what you're eating. It makes our jobs easier. What do you want? Let us know what you want, because if your conversations are on social media, we'll get it and we'll make the products that you want. I think that's important. I think consumers that know what they're eating and know what they're drinking make our job more fun. We know that we're targeting people that really care, that have, a complex palate, that thinks about what they're eating and drinking. We like doing that. We like when people actually talk about what they're eating and drinking, and makes it exciting. If you think about it, we are making flavors for you guys. We're doing it for our customers, but our customers are out there working for you. They're putting things out on the market, on the store shelves that you're buying. So speak up.
Yeah. And good to know that our voices are being heard, as we're talking on social media about what we like and what we're eating and drinking. I really appreciate that insight. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Ellie. Been a delight.
This was great fun, and it was great talking to you. And
well, good. And thank you, listeners, for being with us for this episode of the Future Foodcast. Thanks to our sponsor, Farm to Plate. They are enabling better food supply chain management. You can find out more at farmtoplate.io. Until next time, this is Pam signing out.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.